Hello, my beauty. Welcome to another episode of Rebel Satsang. Your host, Ingrid H. Turner. We're going to tackle a subject together that is fucking fraught, and that is sex. And what better place to have this conversation than on this freaking saucy, spicy red bed that I'm on. I'm in an Airbnb in El Paso, Texas, and it's called the Crimson Room. Oh, it's hot. Red curtains, red bedspread, roses on the wall. We have a party in here. I digress. Okay, no, really, let's talk about sex to get spiritual with it. And this is going to be an interesting conversation. I decided I'm going to just dissect this with you, kind of dissect this live. I have Saturn in my 5th house, and it rules my 8th house. So if you're an astrology buff, you know what that means. If you're not an astrology buff, let me explain. Saturn in the 5th house is the house of relationships. It's the house of fun. It's the house of play. It's the house of creativity. Saturn shows up and goes, you take this fucking seriously. And it rules my 8th house. I have, I think Aquarius on my 8th house cusp, which is ruled by Saturn. And 8th house is the house of sexy time. So what does that mean for Ingrid and sex? We're getting intimate here. Sorry. Not sorry. Come on. Come closer. Actually, yeah, definitely. That's better. Okay. I think what I have experienced with sex is that there's been a certain amount of rigor, like integrity, rigor, morality, and maybe even prudishness to some degree associated with my experience of sex. And I think that's a solid foundation actually to talk about spirituality and sex and how that comes to play, because our culture, it's pretty prudish. I mean, the country was built on the morals of the pilgrims, and they were, we burned bitches for sexy things. I know in the United States, particularly, there's a lot of prudishness around sex and sensuality. And so it shows up in really interesting ways in our spirituality. You know, on the one extreme, you have the Christian church, which puts very tight parameters on sex and its appropriateness and its, connection to God. It's kind of not, right? And then you have, on the other side of the spectrum, you have people who are very deep in sexual healing, sexual spirituality, tantric, and going on the other side. Personally, I've never been in either extreme with that. And I think that's thanks to my exalted Saturn ruling my 8th house of sex. There's always been this kind of like, let's do this right. Let's be in integrity about this. Now, what comes to me when we're talking about sex and when I'm really feeling into what sex and spirituality, how they can come together and how they can come together and create something fucking majestic in a spiritual sense and in a human sense, and when it can come together and be really like destructive. In my spiritual work, I'm always saying, get the body on board, take it to the body, come back to your body. The body is the bridge for everything. And you and I are humans having a human experience. We are physical creatures. Sex is part of being a physical creature. It's part of being a physical creature for, the nuts and bolts of procreation. But there's also health components, like physical health components to our sex life. If you don't have an active sex life, there will be health consequences to not getting your jiggy on. There are also, of course, health consequences to getting your jiggy on a little too much, a few too many people. So if everything comes back to the body, in my soulmatic renewal work, I say the body is the bridge. We use the body to bridge between the story and the experience, the story and the emotional experience. And I feel like sex, the physical act of sex, can very much be used the same way, where we can disconnect from our mind and come together in unity, in complete, like, getting this image, this vibratory image. This image is boing, like harmonics, like perfectly pitched harmonics when our physical bodies come together in perfect unison and move into the physical unison becomes an energetic unison, which expands our vibration, our aura, and opens us up to a spiritual, a divine experience. So we can come into divine union with that. Now, that is certainly not always the way it goes. And when we have a lot of baggage around sex, or we have a lot of baggage in our relationship with our partner, and we just have a lot of mental stuff going on, it can get very weird. That is because of how much we put on sex, like how much mental stuff we put on sex. Is it dirty? Is it bad? Is it wrong? You know, are you being slutty? Are you having too much sex? Are you having not enough sex? Are you sexually desirable? Is that your worth? Is that your identity? I mean, I know certainly for women, and I can't speak as much to men about this, but I know for women, a huge part of a woman's identity is centered around her sexual desirability. And it's weird because it swings in two different directions. On the one hand, it's like we have to be sexually desirable to be worthy, worthwhile. On the other hand, you can't, if you're too sexually desirable, you're worthless. So sex is weird, but it's because we make it weird. But coming back to just the nuts and bolts, like physical act and the spiritual massaging that can happen from your sexual experience, like with your partner, with somebody who you feel deeply drawn to, you already feel energetically connected and moving towards this, bringing that into, merging that with the physical union, I feel like can be a really delicious opening to divine spirit where you can bring through divine energy, have an experience of that oneness, the all that is within that act, the sex act. And then, of course, there's the orgasm. Mother of God, like, what is this? Thank you. The sex is important, like I said, for the nuts and bolts of procreation, but then we're given this ability to find pleasure from having sex with each other. That ability to create pleasure, it feels like there's something really potent in that, about the buildup of energy that occurs within the body and manifests in a physical experience of absolute pleasure. As a woman, this is typically true, maybe not true for everybody, but it's certainly true for me, and it's true for many women who I've spoken with. We concentrate to have an orgasm. We consciously cultivate an orgasm, even when our partner is doing all the right things. The woman is consciously cultivating the orgasm. And so if the energy is not right, if there's emotional baggage, if there's mental shit, if there's, then the orgasm is hard to achieve for a woman. And I don't know, perhaps men just, they cultivate that all day long. I don't know. It would be very interesting to hear from the male perspective about the sexual experience, the sexual and the spiritual experience, and that coming together. When I feel into this, it feels like there is an incredible opportunity for spiritual expansion through sex, through the energy that is cultivated, the openness to divinity, the openness to energy that is cultivated. I get this feeling like almost like you could create a portal with the right sex. I should say the right sex was going into sex with a very pure and present and pleasure focused approach. Pleasure feels important. I've been going through a lot of mulling about what is important to me in life. And I realized that as I am out on the road, I'm nomadic, right? I'm just bouncing around wherever I damn well please. And I'm spending a lot of time by myself. And I'm spending a lot of time just feeling into my own body, feeling into what's important to me, how I want to live the rest of my life. I mean, I'm 38 years old. I feel like my life is very likely about half over. I have to start getting real about this. And I realize what is important for me is to be happy and to feel pleasure, not necessarily sexual pleasure all the time. Okay, that's not necessary. But to have a life that is full of pleasurable things, pleasurable activities, pleasurable interactions. I no longer have time for bullshit. I no longer have time for game playing or toxicity or spending my time and energy doing things I don't want to fucking do, that do not bring me pleasure and bring me happiness. And feeling into that energy, I feel like spirit has been speaking to me about how important this is for me and for us. And we have moved into this incredible new paradigm, this new earth, this new energy of community and unity and love. And it feels like this is the fucking theme, is we need to be committed to our own happiness, raising our own vibration, our own frequency, and thus raising the frequency of the planet. And I feel like moving in intentionally to sex with whoever you damn well please, as many times as you want. I'm not about only one person at a time or not multiple, if the energy feels right and good, and freeing and opening, oh, just 11:11 when I hit that. Then that's the right experience, the right sexual experience. And I feel like moving into whatever feels pleasurable and feels like a yes in the body. And then intentionally asking, saying prayer, even incorporating prayer into your sexual experience, oh my God, is going to be a powerful force for opening up your body, your heart, and your aura to experience God consciousness in this physical act of sheer fucking pleasure. That's the breakdown for sex and spirituality as it's coming through to me. And I really had a lot of fun feeling into this, telling you a little bit about my experience and breaking it down energetically. Tell me what you think in the comments. Okay, I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear your experience. I want to hear from the fellas too. What do you think? And subscribe to my channel so we can have more of these conversations. All right, thanks. I love you like crazy.